All right, it started recording. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's edition of Imperial as One's Belonging series, where we explore the lived experiences of individuals from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities, stories which give us an idea of what it is that has given them their sense of identity and their sense of belonging. And this week, it's no exception, as I say each week, we've got another really excellent conversation that we're going to have with Aneesha Bhumber. I probably said your surname wrong, sorry.
That's okay.
Aneesha is a laboratory technician at Imperial College, and she's also the co-chair of Imperial 600, I600. Aneesha?
Yes, I'm trying to mute all my notifications so no one gets feedback.
Okay. It's really brilliant to have you on. I think I've known you. How long have I known you? Probably about 3 years?
Probably, yeah. Well, I joined Imperial in like 2020 November, so it's coming up to like 2.5, 3-ish years now.
Yeah.
And it feels like a long amount of time, but also the shortest amount of time ever, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know if that's like the Imperial time, like universe. So like we have our own like time zone, don't we? We don't follow like, Greenwich Mean Time. We follow Imperial time. So okay. I think things seem here. I think when I joined, it was just so quiet. No one was around, but now everyone's back. So
and it's crazy, it should be. As it should be.
I don't have to explain it to you, Wayne. You know how crazy it is up here.
So I'm going to kick off by asking you that first question, which is, tell me a little bit about what it was that gave you your sense of identity, sense of belonging as you were growing up in the family home. What was it that kind of like set you to say, this is where I belong?
I think my parents were, I guess it was important for them to, at a young age, to kind of talk us through and almost always remind us that, you are from an Indian heritage. This is your background. And also, you are Punjabi, you are Sikh. This is your roots. This is what, I identify as your mother. This is, your dad is also Sikh. Mostly everybody in the family. This is how we identify. And, it was something that was told to me, like, from a really young age. When you sort of learn how to say your name, you learn then, yes, I'm Indian. Yes, I'm Sikh. Yes, I'm Punjabi. It's like things it's almost like when you introduce yourself, or like when you learn to say your name and your age. People always like to ask little kids, like, how old they are. It was like one of the things you just always knew. So I think my parents wanted it to be quite an important part of my identity growing up. And they never let me forget it. I mean, they still don't. But I think it's a good thing now.
How did they emphasize that you were Punjabi, that you were Sikh? What were the kinds of things that they did to kind of like help you to understand your heritage, as it were?
Well, like it was things like when we were very young, we would be, we obviously speak English at school, and my parents, English is predominantly their first language. Maybe Punjabi is quite mixed actually. But they wanted us to speak Punjabi at home when possible. When we had family members over, we'd speak Punjabi at home. With our younger cousins, it was almost like we had to like lead by example. So when they would come over, we would speak Punjabi. We would be like, think we were being sneaky and try and speak in English, and we'll get told off. They're like, you need to speak. You guys are not meant to be. You're meant to be speaking Punjabi. You're meant to be practicing. And we would go to Sunday school and things like that. And it was only 2 hours on a Sunday, and I remember absolutely hating going anyway, because which little kid likes to go to school on a weekend? But it was so important for my parents to, you guys, I want you to know about like Sikh history and like where do these traditions come from, and learn how to read and write. I still can't do it, read and write very well, but I think my parents are still happy that I can do it. But it was always like, even in the house, you'd always have like Punjabi music in the kitchen on, in the radio, like super loud. Like it was just all around me almost. And it was like, my parents were like, okay, yeah, you live in London and we live in London, but like, we're going to pull in all these little reminders to you all the time. And I would always ask questions too. Like I'm not sure how much like people know about Indian culture, but I'm sure everybody knows the big Indian wedding, like stereotype. I would love to say it's not true, but it is true. So I think when you're growing up and you go to all these functions and things, I would ask my parents, like, why do they do that? What's this? Like, kids just love to ask questions. So I think they also like gave me a sense of identity through answering my questions. And then sometimes mum and dad would be like, do you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to ask grandma, or I'm going to ask granddad. So it was like, I was always, I think when you're younger, you always tend to ask questions. And I think they made it really important, one of their top priorities, to make sure they had the answers, make sure they had the almost home immersive experience. We were like, you know, very close to younger cousins, and they were also like immersed in the same way. So when we went over to their houses, it was a similar thing. So it's as if my family almost like had this military operation going with like all the households, like, this is what we're going to do.
So you developed a sense of, from what you're saying, it sounds like there was a developed sense of community.
Absolutely.
Of people who were from India, from the Punjab, who spoke a specific word. This is how we connect and make sure our children connect with our heritage. Yeah. It
was very important for them. And, you know, for my parents and my like uncles and people close to my family, obviously my mum was born and brought up in Kenya, and my dad in Tanzania. So they also had like been brought up in East Africa. So there was influences from there as well, which I don't think they really realized either until a lot later. Because at home, obviously, you know, my parents were speaking Punjabi with us, but there'd be words that they would mix up with Swahili, because those are the words that they had in their mind from their childhood. So like now when I speak Punjabi sometimes to people, they're just like, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm, oh, sorry, that's a Swahili word. Like, I've just muddled it all up.
So to some extent, they had brought other cultural references, but cultural references from their own growing up, their own formative years, which absolutely inculcated into them. They was bringing that into the home. So would you say, how connected with your grandparents, because your grandparents were born in India, am I right to say that?
Yeah, like my grandparents were like born in Punjab, and not even like, you know, they brought up in like the villages, like as in it was, they were brought up like farming, so in like the most rural parts of Punjab, not even in the cities. So their upbringing was, you know, so different to my parents, who grew up like, you know, in Nairobi, which is like a huge city, and you know, Tanzania again is, you know, it's a city. So even their differences in, you know, my grandma has all these stories about farming, and like, she's like, you know, you guys have never had like fresh milk, and you guys have never like had to churn butter from scratch, and she's just telling us how easy we have it.
Fantastic. So from that perspective, your grandparents are the ones who really wanted your parents to have that immersive experience of what it's like to be there, and then that's kind of like passed on from your parents to you. Yeah?
It's like my grandparents think that like my parents, you know, they have such an easy life, they grew up in the city, you know, be driven everywhere. So it's so nice and cushy. And the same with my parents now. They think that like, you know, me and my sister are just completely spoiled. So I guess maybe that's just a generation thing from each generation to the
next. So whenever we compare ourselves, how you guys have got it easy compared to what we had.
So, yeah, my grandma was like, we used to wake up at like, you know, 4 a.m. and like, you know, basically run the farm and take all the crops and all this. And you guys are just like complaining about queues in Tesco. I'm like, yeah, but the queues are long.
So how was it then for you? I can see that from your grandparents and parents that they really did instill that sense of culture in you, even to the point that they took you to Sunday school to learn about their heritage. Whether you liked it or not, you had to know about it.
You had to go. I used to pretend to oversleep. It never worked. Like, I used to be like, oh, it's like 10:30, it's too late to go, like Sunday school starts at 11, and Mom's like, oh, it's okay, we'll go, we'll make it, we'll be a bit late. I'm like, damn it. Like, really tried.
So, what was it like then at school then? What was it like for you when you were going to school?
So at school, because I've always lived and was brought up in West London. I haven't even moved like from the area I was brought up in. I think I'm still, as much as I probably wouldn't admit, I'm quite attached to West London.
Right.
And I think at school, it was a very multicultural school. In that respect, it is I think we're quite lucky actually, because we had people from so many different backgrounds. And I think that also really helps you build your identity, because you meet people and they're like, I'm, this is my name, I'm from here. Some people also would bring like, their own food in their lunchboxes and stuff, then they'd teach you this is this. So I think that also helped. And then you would do the same thing almost. I remember when I was at school and, we would discuss things like, oh, it's Eid or it's Diwali. And like, you have this multiculturalism and people learn about, they ask you about your culture and then you learn about them as well. So I think we're really lucky in that sense to have a very multicultural school, both high school and primary school.
So did that help to consolidate your sense of identity, your sense of who you were?
Absolutely, I think so. Because it was sort of the case of, people would ask, where are you from? And, what does it mean to be Sikh? What does it mean to be, all these questions I think kids do ask each other, and you do want to know when you're friends with people, about their culture and their upbringing. I think it did reinforce like my identity as well. And I had friends also who were similar to me, as in their parents were either they had been brought up in India and came to London, or even I had friends who even more similarly had parents who had grew up in East Africa and then also like me. So they're like, we had so much in common how we would talk about. And I think my parents as well, they, from a very young age, were like, is always make friends with people. You feel comfortable with being yourself, was something my parents said. And people who are like, basically, it was always told to me that you be friends with the good kids at school, like kids who are studying and the kids who are listening and paying attention, sitting right at the front, taking the notes with the good grades, be friends with them. So like, it was. So,
did you ever rebel against your parents' your parents' advice or suggestions?
I don't think I ever have till now, to be honest. I wish I could say I have. But I think I think there's always things from your parents that you take on and they almost become part of your DNA almost. Like there's things like, if somebody's behind me, I'll have to open it for them. If somebody is please and thank you, things I just can't, it's too ingrained that if I don't do them, I feel so bad that like, I feel like my mum's eyes are just on me all the time, like wherever I am. So I think there's certain things that are ingrained in your personality, but there are certain things with my parents that I do, I don't agree with everything that they are. But I think the majority of things that they've like really drilled into us growing up, now I see the importance of them. At that time, I just thought, oh my God, this is so pointless. I don't need to know this.
So,
but I think with my parents as well, like now, being 27 years old and looking back on my upbringing, and I would never tell them this, maybe they should know, but I understand them like more and more as days go on. And people always said that to me, that when you get older you understand. And I'm like, oh my God, it's just actually
happening. So tell me about, what was it that kind of like at school, were there any role models other than like your parents, anyone that you thought, I would like to do this, I'd like to do that, and I saw role models or imageries or anything like that who you thought to yourself, yeah, I could do that? Or did anyone kind of like help you along your way in terms of, because you've done sciences, was there anything that, any kind of like, role models that you saw?
Yeah, I think my family is what people in my family. So in my family, we are like outnumbered. So we have way more women in my family and we have way less men. So I have way less male cousins and we're just outnumbered by women. And that's the way I've been basically raised. And I think even like with younger, actually mostly older cousins when I was growing up, like who were, when I was maybe in like primary school, very young, they were probably in like their 20s at the time. So the age that I am now, basically.
Yeah.
And I think they were great role models and we were very close as a family. We still are a very close family. I think seeing them at almost when I was younger, at the age of adulthood, as I say, in quote marks, because I don't really count myself as an adult right now, but let's say I am. And I think I just saw them sort of take the quite, I guess, quite conservative upbringing they had I was having when I was younger, and take the parts of it that I feel like were, I don't want to say useful to them, but help them in their identity and, you know, in becoming them and becoming a successful person. And then also taking the identity of being a British born Asian. And I saw that because I could see how different they were in comparison to my parents or their parents. So they were almost like my first role models as my older cousins, who then went to university and, you know, got the jobs they wanted to get. I mean, some of them are they're doing teaching, or they're doing like engineering, or they're doing, you know, they are doing science, they're doing math. So but again, I think they were great role models, but there was an idea of like, you know, they're great role models because they're doing things that will lead them into good jobs. Yeah. So I think that was always something that was the reason why it was like almost acceptable role models, I'd say. So I think they were great role models, but I think they were almost like parent approved role models.
Yeah, so your parents, if you had any dodgy cousins, you weren't seeing them.
Right? No, exactly. So maybe it was like maybe it was more calculated than I realized. Maybe my parents were like, be close to them, hang out with them, like we know they're good, like we know. So
did your parents push you in any way to say, right, we want you to go to university, or was it kind of like it definitely, yeah, they pushed you to? What about? I've spoken about going into sciences. What about the school? When you were at school, did they encourage you to be a woman in science, as it were?
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, my parents were like telling me about university when I was probably like still in school. It wasn't like, oh, you if you want, like, you're going. Like, there's no, and it was forced. Like, it wasn't something I ever thought about not doing. It was always something that was, you will do it, and if you don't do it, then like you will struggle. That was it. So I don't think it was, I would say my house still, actually it's the same now, there are such cases of having many options. I think it's more like, this is what we think you should do, and because we're your parents, we're right and you're wrong. So it was always university, and that is the case with everyone in my family. It wasn't the fact that, like, you know, it was, this is what everyone does, this is what we know, like, well, you know, once you graduate, you'll get a good job, that's how it works, that's how we're going to ensure that you have a successful, comfortable life. And at school, because when I was in high school, it was like, it was a science and technology college anyway. Right. So I think it was very pushed on us anyway to be focused on it. And there was this idea as well that, like, you know, we had a nice balance. Like, we didn't have, you know, as many people say, like, there's not many women in science and tech, I guess, still, but we had a good balance. You know, I didn't feel sort of any kind of intimidation or anything pursuing science at school or at university. For me, it was just, I followed interest. But I also know that interest was something supported by my parents. But that interest had been something else. I don't know whether or not I would have been followed through.
That's a very good point. That's a very good. So the fact that they saw that you were ambitious, that you, not just ambitious, you were following the kind of like blueprint that they had in mind for you.
Exactly.
Yeah? So it was a supportive nature all around. You weren't. So when you got to university as such, how was that for you? What sense of belonging did you have at university? What was different, or what was the same about being at university for you?
I think for me, like, at university, my goals were very clear. I mean, I had a great time, and you know, I think uni is a time where you have way more freedom than you ever do in school. Of course, you know, you have a lot more authority over your own life, your own decisions. But I don't think at that point, I think through school, I think I knew my identity, absolutely. But I think at university, because my goals were to get into university, do the course I wanted to do, get the qualifications, and leave. Those were basically my goal, my plans, basically. So I think through university, I just used that as like a vessel to like get to where I wanted to be almost. It was like it was like a checkbox for me almost. To get to the like, you know, the stage I am now where I can, you know, be working and you know, live independently.
So based on what you've just said there, I'm just wondering to myself, how much engagement did you have with university life whilst you were at university? Or was it more of a kind of like stepping stone, I need to get in and not get out, but get in, get what I need?
Kind of. I mean, I wouldn't say it was completely, that was always the back of my mind. I mean, I did do the classic, like, you know, I joined the Sikh Society, we went to the events, and like I met some great people, and you know, I did at the same time join, you know, the LGBTQ at university, but I think it was more that I just did them because I thought I kind of should. It wasn't that I was fully engaged in them. I mean, I had a great group of friends at uni, and you know, they were all from very multicultural, different backgrounds as well. But I don't think I ever individually took the time to then explore my identity at university. It was, for me, like, this is the last stage of my education for now. I just want to get it done as smoothly as possible, you know? And and it was always told to me as well, like, when I was at uni, you know, you study now, you haven't got that long, then you can do what you want later. I mean, that was something that my parents said almost like every day.
So it was almost like a stepping stone to independence.
Absolutely.
So once you've got your qualifications, you're more inclined to be able to secure a job, etc. And then independence comes with that, because then you have your own money, etc., etc. Okay.
And for my parents, I think it was like, now we don't have to worry about her. Like, I think that's like, for my parents, like this idea that, like, you know, once you're done with uni, you've got your own job. Our job raising you is we're gonna check out now. Like, you know,
it's kind of like that. I think there's other things they start worrying about after at that point, you know, but they know that you can stand on your own 2 feet.
Exactly.
So, tell me a little bit about what it was that kind of like, now you're here at Imperial College. What was it that helped you to get your sense of identity, sense of belonging at Imperial?
I think I really started to, once I did get out of university and I knew that, like, you know, the bulk of my education, the big chunks of it were sort of aside now. I think I started to focus on, where do I fit in the world of work, which is another huge like question. And Imperial's the second like university I've worked at, and I think when I joined here, and for quite a long time actually after I joined, and I don't know if it's because when the time that I joined, there was nothing going on, there was nobody around, there wasn't any sort of, you know, it was the middle of COVID, and I don't think I felt that I belonged for a very long time when I did first join. But the first sense of belonging I did get from Imperial was when I went to the first Imperial 600 event I went to. So that was in the summer after I joined. So I joined in November, and then the August after that, I went to the first event. And that's the first time I think I'd met so many people from Imperial, because there was nobody about here, like at Hammersmith, and B, like, so many people from so many different backgrounds, working in different campuses, you know, doing such a range of amazing things, and then, you know, just learning that, you know, that the sort of, I guess, LGBTQIA face can mean so many different things. That was my first feeling of, in this group of people, I belong, but I also don't feel like I need to try and belong. And I think that was a really like comforting moment for me. You know, when you're in a space where you can completely authentically be yourself, and you're just not trying to be like anybody else or be anybody else. You're your truest self. And I think that's how that was the first time I really felt that, being an Imperial staff member.
Okay, so that having gone to this event in the summer of probably 2021 or so. Yeah, sometime around then, you felt that you no longer, you could almost like take away a mask.
Yeah, for the first time, I think, in a long time. I think when you start a new job as well, I mean, I don't think anybody's their true selves in like the first few months anyway. You have to navigate, because you have to sort of, depending on who you're with and the people, and you slowly come out of your shell a bit more and a bit more, slowly. And then okay, now I'm actually my bit more like my true self. But I think when you join at a strange time when there's nobody around, I think it made me slightly in my own, just get like kind of like more and more into my shell. And I think that really kicked me out of it for good.
So give us a sense of what it was. What was it about this particular group? What was it about the community that you found which really helped you find your sense of identity, sense of belonging?
I think at that point it wasn't, and also I was in two minds about whether to go or not. That was another thing I remember. I was like, should I go? Should I not? Not sure. I'm not sure how many people will be there. I'm not, you kind of, sometimes when you're trying something new, you do get a bit, I guess, apprehensive. And I think it was, as soon as I entered the room, I remember just entering, and I went on my own, and not for, maybe for the first, I think for the first like 5 minutes, I just went into, there was people everywhere, and people are always in like little groups sort of interacting. And I think I just went to the closest like circle I was like, close to in terms of proximity, and just joined that conversation circle. But people were smiling, they were happy, they were laughing, people were getting to know each other. And I think I saw, there were people who I felt like had maybe been at college a little bit longer. There were people who had been at college maybe like me, quite new. There were postgrad students there. There were staff members from all over. There was some people that I had seen their faces, but I'd not like met them in real life. But I think what made me feel so comfortable was the even the visible diversity that was there, just from me looking into the room. Because I think when you walk in, if you are in a room and you see a room, and this room is filled with people who don't look anything like you, or don't act anything like yourself, or like almost you feel like when you enter that room you're going to stick out. And I think I'm sure many people have experienced that, where they feel like, I have to, if I'm going to enter this room of people, I'm going to have to be somebody else in order for me to fit in. At least, like, you might have to just do that for a bit, but you have to probably do it. But this was the first time where I thought, you know what, like, there is so much diversity in this room, in terms of age, in terms of gender identification, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of which label or umbrella that you identify with in the LGBTQIA spectrum. So it just made me feel insignificant, but in such a good way.
Right. So although there's a diversity as there is, you still felt included in that diversity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I felt like such a tiny speck in this whole pool of people. And I was like, this is so nice. Because you just
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, because you just sort of, I think that, to not just like quote the title of this conversation, but you then belong, because you have this pool of people, and wherever you are in this pool of people, you belong with them, because there is no set formula. So I think that's how I felt. I was like, I can go and talk to any of these people here, and I will definitely find something in common with them.
And that's really, really, really good to hear. So tell me, because I know that at the moment they're having elections. What was it that made you then? There's one thing going into an environment and saying, I feel like I belong. There's another thing to say, I want to actually help to shape the direction of where this is going. So what was it about? I know you've put yourself forward and you are currently a coach. How did that come about? What's the background story, and how does that help you?
It wasn't instant. It was something that I thought about for a while. And I think I had been, normally what I try to do is whenever Imperial 600 have events, I always try to go. And this was even before I'd assumed any kind of responsibility for organizing, co-chair responsibilities, nothing. I think it's because it gave me that chance, as you said, to take off that mask. Every single time I went, I felt that. And it was like a guaranteed feeling that every I think we had so many events that even if we were just having informal events, we're just meeting people saying, oh, you know, some of the Imperial 600 people are going to a social, and I would go along, and even then I would feel, you know, take this mask off. So I think after feeling that and having that experience sort of repeated each and every time, and then meeting so many different people through that, it's like each time I went, I met new people, and then we became friends. Another time I met, and then again we became friends. So I think I just had every time I went, I had such a positive experience. And I remember there was one event, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was just another I600 event. I think it was at South Cairn, and it was at Eastside. And then I remember just talking to Simon, and I think this was probably after, like, you know, quite into the event, that people would come and met and left. And I was like, Simon, maybe I should, like, you know, I would love to get involved and like help you guys arrange something like this. And I didn't really think about, like, you know, what that meant. But I was just like, do you know what? I like it so much here. I want to stay. Like, I want to do something more.
Yeah. So before we even engage in mind to say, what does this involve? It was kind of, I want to get involved. And before you knew it.
Yeah. I was just like, oops. Like, I meant, you know, when you mean something, but you don't have like the forethought about what you've just said.
Yeah.
There were free beers there, so I don't know how much of that was. There were some free drinkies involved, so I'm sure that was my true self out there, you know, speaking. But I think it was a bit uninhibited, which is a good thing. So I did say that to Simon. I was like, you know what, I really want to get involved. And he was like, okay, well, we'll have, when we have the next meeting, and, you know, come along and see. And I was like, okay, I'm happy to do that. And then I guess through that and going to a few meetings and then helping, you know, all these guys arrange things, and people becoming such good friends with them, like becoming real friends with them, like not just like when you're friends with colleagues, like real, like friends in your soul. Like, that's how I feel about like most of the people I like have met through Imperial 600. And then what Simon was doing the co-chairing solo for a while, and he kind of asked, you know, is there anyone who wants to? And I was like, maybe I should do it.
Yeah. So how have you found that experience of helping to shape the direction where I600 is going?
Yeah. I think I went into it knowing its responsibility, but not fully understanding its responsibility almost. I think I understood that, you know, being a co-chair of a network that is encompassing so many different people's identity, journey, you know, it's not something that can even be summed up in its, you know, entirety of what is Imperial 600 is very difficult to sum up. So I think I knew it would be a big responsibility, but I don't think I realized sort of like, I knew how much work went in, but I don't think I realized how much, as in, you know, put something as putting out a newsletter, you know, we all read newsletters, about 1,000 emails in my inbox, and, you know, all these things, but the writing of it, the making sure that the language is very inclusive, you're getting the message across, everybody feels like they're included in this message, we're not making any sweeping statements, we're not making any generalizations, all these things. And I think I think for me in my head, it was organizing is like ABC, it's done, but it's more like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Just all these teeny tiny little things you must do before you get to the end. Yeah, I underestimated that, and that's the confidence of the beers. I think I can do this. This is so easy. I mean,
until you have to do it, and you think, "Oh my goodness, what have I done?"
Red tape, permission from this person and this person and this needs to happen. Because things like, you know, college has its own rules. So I think
Yeah.
I was a bit, you know, I don't think overwhelmed is the right word, because overwhelmed makes it sound negative, but overwhelmed in a good way. So I was like, this actually it's a, there is a lot to do, and things are not, I'm sure Wayne, you understand what I'm talking about in terms of trying to execute something is just not that easy.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I feel like I was a little bit naive, but I still love it though.
That's fantastic. That's what I like to hear, that you still love it, and I believe you put yourself forward to continue.
And that wasn't even a question in my mind, because Simon did say to me, like, you know what, come on for a bit in the end of last year and see how you feel, because elections are coming up, and you know what, if you feel like you really hate it and you hate us, then you can just be like, you know, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm done. So give it a go. And then I wasn't even a question in my mind, like when when Cynthia and Edith were like, you know, we need if you want to apply, you need to fill in this form. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. It was
fantastic.
Never like, maybe I should, maybe. I was like, I'm gonna do it. Just do it.
No, we need willing people. We need people who are willing to put their head above the parapet and actually. Some people will hide away, and it's about increasing engagement. It's about helping to be that voice, to amplify the voices of those who maybe who may not want to actually speak out at this moment in time. They want to speak out, but now's not quite the right time for them. So sometimes you have to interpret that and still articulate it for them. So we've spoken about your sense of belonging at Imperial. How was that felt within like your family and your community when you said when you came out and said, you know, this is who I am? What was the reaction, and how did that make you feel?
Well, at home, it was something that I think my parents, I guess, knew. I would never say they didn't know, but I think it was almost something that they were waiting for me to tell them.
Right.
Which I assume it's the same with many people, you know. And I think they knew, but they were like, you know, we want you to tell us in your words. We want you, you know, to. I think when I sat down and I did tell them, they were like, one of the first things they said was, you know, we wish you'd told us sooner. And I was like, and I did ask back. I was like, what do you mean? Like you didn't know sooner? And they're like, you know, we did. I mean, I don't know if they're trying to give themselves too much credit. Maybe they didn't know, but I think their reaction was, I wish you'd told us sooner. I think parents are, you know, in that respect, they always want to support you as early as they can when they know that there might be something you're struggling with. I mean, my parents are 100% like that. So I think from their point of view, it wasn't, I wish you had told us sooner because we wanted to know. It was more that I wish you had told us sooner because we felt like we probably could have supported you through it.
Right. That's go on.
Yeah. And I think with them as well, and I think even now, it's not that they don't accept it. I think it's new territory for them, which I completely understand. It's not something that, you know, they've had to experience before. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only person who is out in my family. Again, I don't know. My family is about 700 people, so statistically they're probably more. But as far as I know, it was my parents. It was like they didn't have a rule book about how to navigate through this. I think for them, their biggest, I guess, concern was that we don't want your life to be difficult, and that's one of the things that at that point made me so emotional. Because I was just like, what do you mean? And they were like, you know, it's difficult, you know, as my mum was saying, like, you know, trying to move through the world as somebody who identifies as a woman is you know, can be deemed as difficult. You can say that. Then also moving through the world as a person of color, you can add another layer of that. And then she's like, now you're at, you know, you have to add another layer of being a gay woman. You have to add that other layer of intersectionality on top of, you know, who you already are. And I think that was my parents' biggest sort of concern and apprehension, that, you know, we're almost scared that, you know, you're gonna go through a difficult time. And as much as I appreciated that, it was almost like, I can't really do anything about this. It's kind of like, this is who you are. So, you know, this is the way you're going to move through the world.
Yeah. So to an extent, they were accepting of it, but they were almost saying, well, again, have you considered all of the realities that this may
Absolutely.
well now encompass on you?
Exactly. And have you thought, it was almost, it wasn't that they were saying, are you sure? But they were kind of saying, like, have you really thought about every possible sort of implication of this? And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, because I've been thinking about this since I was aware that this was part of my identity. But I think parents are like that. They, there is that factor, I'm sure, with all of our parents as well. They're just like, yeah, but I'm older than you and I have more experience than you, so I know better than you. So you haven't thought about this, or this, and you should have.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. It's really interesting hearing the journey that you've gone on, the journey of acceptance, etc. I'm going to open up to the audience that we have. Is there anyone who has a question which they would like to ask Aneesha? Yeah. If there is, just put your hand up and I will come to you. Otherwise, Aneesha, what would you like to see, since you're standing as co-chair, to be the co-chair, what would you like to see Imperial College, or as part of the network, what would you like to see them develop over the next 3-4 years?
I think Imperial 600, I think from my point of view, I would love to see, in my vision, if I close my eyes and I thought about how I would want Imperial 600 to look like perhaps in the next 3 years, I think what would be so great is to have more people of color join the network. Whether or not there is that community in college of people, I don't know what the demographics are in college in terms of people of color who identify as LGBTQ. I'm not sure what the demographics are. But I would love for Imperial 600 to be a place where people of color, like people like me, who feel like I can be here and I am safe here. And I think, and also having more members in I600 who are, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure they are in I600, but more non-binary and trans individuals, I feel like, because as I said, I've been to, events of I600, and I don't think I've met, I don't think a large group of trans individuals or people who have, to me, maybe not haven't said that they're non-binary. Of course, that might be their identity, but I think that those two, labels are very, I feel like, just underrepresented in college. And then I think they're again underrepresented in Imperial 600. So I think in those two brackets, in terms of people of color, and then having trans and non-binary individuals as well, I would love for the network to have more people representing both of those groups.
Just kind of like Pete, not pulling that apart, but kind of like interrogating that a little bit more. What do you think are the potential barriers? Are there potential barriers from individuals from
Absolutely.
the two demographics which you've just outlined? What do you think are the barriers, and how would you potentially overcome those barriers going forward?
I think it's difficult for me to speak about the barriers for trans and non-binary individuals as much, because I don't, my gender identity, I wouldn't say is binary per se. But I think it's difficult to speak on behalf of trans individuals. But I think for people of color, I can definitely say the limitations, I think, are that people are not, in my experience, the people that I know they find it difficult to be out to themselves, which is step one, I feel. Again, because of upbringing, of culture, maybe not having a support network of people who they feel like, oh, this is another person who has done it, meaning I can do it. And I think if they're not out to themselves, it's very difficult then to be out at work. And then if you're not out at work, then it's quite difficult to join Imperial 600. So there are all these steps, I feel like, in your acceptance. I think everybody has an acceptance journey. You'll never just wake up one day and be like, I'm a gay brown woman and I'm ready to go. Like, you have to go through all these stages. And as you grow up, obviously, you know, you add more layers to those stages. So I think there are, unfortunately, in the Gaysian community, which is a very bad slang way, but the gay Asian community, I feel like there is a lot of a lacking of self-acceptance. And I think that then limits them from joining networks like that.
So this is kind of almost like my final question, but because we're almost out of time, believe it or not. But that notion which you just introduced there about that lack of acceptance of who they are, where does that come from? Is that from cultural heritage? Is that from perceptions, media? Where is that coming from, which is forcing the individual to say, well, I can't be my authentic self because of...
Yeah, it is culture. It is very difficult. I mean, I can speak to my experience, how difficult it is for me. Obviously my parents know, but even my extended family, you know, it's not something that I would say openly would like to talk about, openly would like to acknowledge. I'm sure if I sat down, you know, with the elders almost of my family and explained, they wouldn't want to listen. I can't say that's the same for all you know, Asian families, but I think there is this, and I think particularly with my family, because they've come from, you know, they're not living in India, they're living here. And I think there's this understanding of, we must hold on to all of our very traditional values, because if we let those go, then who are we? And it's almost like, yes, but we're not telling you to let go of those. We're telling you to be flexible to them and understand that, you know, I can still be a brown Indian Sikh Punjabi person, but also be gay. But that's something that doesn't align in their traditional values. And I think that's the same with many Asian families. And I think if it's very, for me, I was very lucky because I had friendship groups, I think, who were out, that they were from Asian families, they were of similar age. So I almost followed their blueprint, what they were doing. They were like almost ahead in their journey than I was at that point. So I just took what they were doing and tips, tricks almost that they were doing. But I think if you don't have that support, you don't have that network, you're not going to get it in your family, probably not. You don't have that in your friends. You're most likely not out at work. I think not having that pushes you almost deeper and deeper into the closet. I said that was kind of like my luck, but every time you say something else triggers in my mind. And so the thing which you said with regards to the non-acceptance of themselves as that they can be their authentic selves, how does that impact on the mentality? I don't want you to speak for everyone, but did it affect you in any way, in kind of like almost thinking, I can't be my authentic self? How does that make you feel? How did it affect you in any way, or because I don't want you to generalize, but just to speak of your experience? Definitely, I think it's something I still struggle with. I think you almost have to get it into your head that there are going to be people who love you and support you, but they don't accept you, which is a very strange idea to have in your mind, because you think if somebody loves you and supports you, they should accept you. It's almost like a resulting in an input-output situation. But it's not that they don't love you and don't care for you, it's that they almost don't understand that part of you. And there is a lot of reluctance to also learn about that part of you. They're like, this part of you does not align with the way that I see you. So I don't want to recognize that this exists in you, because it doesn't align with my idea of you. And that's something that I don't want to acknowledge. And I think that's very, very difficult. And it has been very difficult for me. I have to continually reinforce. For example, with my, when my sister got married, it was a very, a thing that most of my family members were like, you'll get married next. It's just a thing that they say to everyone, so common, just that's just how they talk. And I have to sometimes, remind them, I won't be getting married in this way, and I won't be next, and it won't be in this manner. And you have to constantly, it's a bit like when you meet new people, you have to come out. It's like in my family, for example, you have to keep reminding them that, this is me. It's like they almost forget, or like, I don't know, maybe a bit in denial as well.
No, I know I'm going to talk to you again about this anyhow, but we will have our conversations when we see each other anyhow, so that's good, right? But I thank you for being so honest and clear and articulate about the whole experience, especially for you and how it impacted and your family's reaction to it and your continued, I'm not going to say struggle, but the continual challenge that you have, in kind of like being allowed. Allowed is the wrong word, but it's the only one I can think of. But where you're able to try to be your authentic self and what other people think about you as a result of that, and because of whether we call it prejudice or bias or whatever it is, that they're not accepting of who you are.
No,
necessarily.
I think with a lot of people, their minds are just closed. And I don't know what the remedy is for that. I wish there was a very simple remedy for it, but I have to make sure that it's almost like if I listen to them and their closed-mindedness, then the only person, they're happy in their world, they're happy in their closed-mindedness. The only person it's going to hurt is me.
And so it's not taking that onto yourself.
Exactly. And that is so difficult to do. And I applaud anybody who's had to do that, who's had to, somebody's said XYZ, something to you, and you have to actively almost like put your shield up and not let those words hit you, get into your mind and change you. It's very difficult. And to continue to be who you are after this almost repeated attack, extremely difficult.
Aneesha, now this really is my last kind of like two, really is, right? And I always ask this question at the end, what advice would you have given to your younger self, right? That's the first one. And what would be the wow factor that your younger self would look at you and say, wow, I've been able to do that?
Yeah, I always think about that, actually. Strangely enough, I think I think about my younger self more often than I care to admit. I'm not sure why, but I do that very often. I think it's a nice way to see your progress, because I think we forget that sometimes. We always look at now and we think, well, how can I get ahead from here? How can I move forward from here? But we forget to look back. We forget to think, well, look at who you were 5 years ago. Forget 5 years on from now where you want to be. Where did you come from?
Yeah.
So I think I do that without realizing quite often. But the advice I'd give to my young self is just, I guess, try not to be so afraid. I know that's a really, and I'm getting slightly emotional actually, because I think it's so difficult as a young person, because you find new things scary. I think most people find new things scary. But I think when you're young, your inexperience makes you more afraid. When you get older, you have your experience under your belt and you think, you know what, I've done this a million times before. So I have my toolkit to get me through.
Yeah.
I would love to have told myself when I was, going through school, 16, 17 years old, just to almost start from that age to tune people out who are just not going to see you for who you are. And I think as most behavior is, you have to learn, you have to practice it. It's not like tomorrow if I wake up, I'm going to suddenly be a morning person because I'm awful at mornings. You have to practice it. You've got to practice. And I wish I'd practiced that when I was a lot younger and not starting it out in the last 5 years. Now I would have been doing it for 10 years. And now if anybody had said something to me, I would have immediately been able to switch it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now I'm still practicing it. So I wish if I could go back in time, I would tell my younger self, like, try to practice this early. Don't give people so much importance, because if they're saying these things to you, they don't know you. If they knew you, they wouldn't be saying them.
Yeah. Yeah. Aneesha, absolutely fantastic, as I knew it was going to be. Right?
I had such fun.
Right. I wasn't expecting anything less. I know you are a bundle of energy. That's all I know. From the very first day I met Aneesha, she has just been a bundle of energy. So I wasn't expecting anything less. And I just want to say a really big thank you for being our guest.
Absolutely.
And for being so frank and candid about your responses and giving some really good advice about how we should be viewing each other, right? And the importance of understanding differences in whatever form they come in, you know? So what I'm going to do just now, if anyone wants to stay on afterwards, then please do. But I'm going to just say what's happening next week, and then we'll have a little 5-minute after party, right? So for next week, we're going to have, let me see, I'm hoping that this has come up.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, we're going to have Hamid Haroon, who is the Northwest Regional Co-Lead for Deep Dementia Phenotyping Network. He is an extraordinary man, and I'm really looking forward to having him as our guest as he explains his career in science and his career as a disabled man, and how he has navigated that space. So please, if you can, tune in next week to hear him as well. Oops, sorry. Then what I'd like to also alert you to is the fact that we've had many other interviews, and if you want to go and look at them, please go to our YouTube channel, which is tinyurl.com/belonging-IAO. I just want to point out, we got him here first. I should now say Professor Jason Arday, who's just become the youngest Black professor at Cambridge University. So just another big shout out. We had him here first. We got him before Cambridge.
We need to get him at Imperial. We need to get him here.
And just there's some other of our over 100 guests that we've had. There's some highlights here as well. But as I said, none of this, or this Belonging series, would never have been able to happen had it not been for the brilliant stories of so many people who have been willing to share their experiences, and in so doing help us to learn about what it does mean for everybody to belong, and what things make us belong, what things make us feel as though we don't belong. And, you know, from that, we can learn many lessons that can help us to make this place, this world that we live in, a better place for everyone. So until next week, have a good week and keep striving to belong.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.